On this week's episode of Comics Controllers, we continue our summer comic book movie discussion by talking about Amazing Spider-Man 2, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it. We also do a review of a game called Viscera Cleanup Detail, where you're space janitors. All that and more on this, episode 20, The Amazing Cleanup Crew. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comics and Controllers. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So I think we're going to continue with our discussion on summer comic book movie extravaganza, blockbuster, kaboom, whatever.
Sounds good.
And we're going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2 this week.
Oof. Okay. If we must.
Okay, so I already know we have differing opinions on it.
Yes.
So, Steven, why don't you go ahead and just kind of give me your general feel of it? Don't have to go into specifics, but just like, what did you think after you walked out of that movie?
After I walked out of that movie, one, I felt like it was 30 minutes too long, and it was a giant trailer for the next 2 to 3 movies that will come from Sony Pictures, and that I was disappointed.
Okay. So when I walked out, I'll agree it was long. I didn't think it was too long, but it was one of those movies where I started looking at my phone and I'm like, well, what time is it? How long is this thing going?
How long have I been here?
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I think it was the best Spider-Man movie that's been done, including the Sam Raimi ones. It was better than those.
I cannot agree with that. Real quick, discussing the time, I will say also that they attempted to kind of even out their pacing towards the end, because the movie is paced very awkwardly in the beginning, but when they attempted to even it out was when I actually noticed, like, hey, we have kind of a lull here. Look at my phone, because I really thought the movie was about to end, and then there was an extra, 20 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what exactly did you not like about it?
All right, let's break it down, and then we can get back to the comparing it to the Sam Raimi.
So this will be spoiler heavy as usual when we talk about movies and TV shows. So,
okay, first of all, I thought the overall film was a little bit too goofy, and I know you and I discussed that Spider-Man is a wisecracking, kind of silly character at times, but I thought they overdid it, especially in those first couple of scenes. Meaning the first scene with the Rhino, the man who will become the Rhino, and the vials of what was it? It was
plutonium.
Plutonium that he was chasing, and then also just with the Stan Lee's appearance comes right after that, and then you have the whole setup with him at the college, and I know that's there to the graduation, that's there to set up more stuff, but I just felt like that whole part of that movie overdid the goofiness a little bit, and there was stuff I even liked in the movie that was a little too goofy. During some of the fights, I will say this: the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, apparently Raimi or someone in that camp did not like the aspect of Peter making as many jokes and quips while he was fighting, which is fine. Everybody's version of Spider-Man is going to be a little bit different, but I think this one does capture Spider-Man acting that way a little bit better. I just think they went a little bit over the line with it.
See, I think the Sam Raimi one downplayed it so much that was not Spider-Man. That was just a guy with spider powers in a spider suit swinging around. Like I felt that. So
the comedy means that much to you that you think
Spider-Man.
Okay.
I mean, that's his thing. Is like he cracks
that is part
jokes
of his thing.
Does that, and I think also in the movie, if you look, he does it a whole lot more in the beginning when it's a lot brighter than in the end when it's a lot darker.
I will agree with that.
And so I think that kind of gets to the whole like, hey, remember this guy's just a kid, and this kid's got a lot of power, and he's just he can't when he's Peter Parker, he has to be much more, kind of quiet because that's the way he is. He's a quiet, nerdy kid. He got picked on, and so when he has a chance to put on that mask, he can do and say things he normally couldn't. So he just kind of goes all out. And when he's in a good mood, he jokes a lot. When he's in a bad mood, he's really quiet and pops the crap out of people.
And I will agree with you on that. Once, as I said at the beginning of this movie, we see that he has just graduated high school, so he's still a very young individual. And towards the end of the movie, especially even before the main tragic event, he's already kind of slowing that down a little bit because of what's going on with his friend, and and after that, of course, I mean, it's just nothing. But I agree with you on that it does completely shift, and that's a good storytelling element if it doesn't annoy the audience when trying to get to it. And I may be a smaller minority in that opinion.
Well, I'll say this too: if anybody out there who complains that there was too much joking from Spider-Man in this movie, but you're a Deadpool fan, then you're a hypocrite. Because if you beg for a Deadpool movie and you thought there was too much joking in this, the Deadpool movie will be 100 times worse, and it'll almost be like Family Guy, and just like so many jokes coming at you so much that it's annoying. So
I would not want a Deadpool movie that
I don't really think that would be a good movie.
I would only want a Deadpool movie depending on who was writing it. If it was Daniel Way's Deadpool, and no offense to Daniel Way, but I didn't like his version of Deadpool. Actually, there's some offense to Daniel Way in there, but anyway, that's my point. It would depend on who was writing it, whether I would actually go see it or not.
Yeah.
Going back to Spider-Man, I thought the music was great. Whoever the music team on this movie, who did the music, was amazing. Electro's theme, when the voices started coming in, I love that, and then it led into his kind of techno thing that announced his presence. Like, that was brilliant.
The voices really got me. Like, when I was in the theater, I thought the people behind me kept talking, and they were whispering, because I was like, God, for real, guys, be quiet. And then I realized it was only happening when he was on screen. I was like, oh.
I just imagine, because I know you. You turn around, I was like, hey. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Like, whoa. But then, yes, I had to ask somebody who went and saw it somewhere else. I was like, was it just me, or was there, like, mumbling when he was on screen? And they're like, no, it was there. I was like, oh.
No, I thought they did a really good job with that, and I thought the voices made a lot of sense for the point that I will get into next. The only thing I thought was that the music did almost overstep its bounds a couple of times. A specific incident was when he's fighting Electro for the last time, and Electro is banging him against the pylons, I guess, or whatever those things are, and it starts actually playing the Itsy Bitsy Spider.
See, I didn't mind that. I actually thought that was kind of funny, because I felt that was Electro, who basically, before he was Electro, when he was just Max Dillon, he was,
He's a genius.
Yeah. He's a genius, but he's also like the ultimate Spider-Man goober fan.
Right, true.
And so Spider-Man's this kind of goofy guy, so here he is finally getting to one-up Spider-Man, so he's going to be just as goofy.
Well, as I said, it didn't go over the line, but it came very close. Like, I think a little bit more of that, and I would have been like, okay, well, that's you've overdone the joke. But I thought the music people really probably deserve some of the best applause for this film. Jamie Foxx, once he becomes Electro, is amazing. Once he becomes the villain that we see on the posters and all that, is great. As Max Dillon, I don't blame Fox. I think he did the best he could with the role. But someone, decided they wanted to do this kind of archetype for Max Dillon that really felt like a rehash of Jim Carrey's character from Batman Forever.
The Riddler.
Where, before he became the Riddler, just like Max Dillon, he was the guy who was doing all these cool projects for Wayne Tech no one knew existed. Mr. Wayne didn't know it really existed, except for the one run-in they have where he disagrees with him. And then you had the kooky little like living area for the Riddler, and you had the kooky little living area for Max Dillon, who has all these Spider-Man things, to the point where he's talking to Spider-Man in the mirror as he's getting ready. But once he becomes, that's fine. And I think you and I had a brief discussion, like, the original Electro, his origin would have been really hard to do in a single movie, and it makes sense. You kind of needed to tie it into Oscorp and tie it into some other stuff. And there's so much going on in this movie. I don't know how they would have done it or had enough time if they didn't tie in everything together. And I know you and I kind of had a little bit of a discussion about this.
The thing is it's like his original thing of Electro is he was just like some guy who worked the power lines, got electrocuted, and then started using his powers to go rob banks. There's really not a movie in that. He was just your typical, oh my God, something bad happened, I have powers guy. So I felt they kind of had, like you said, they tied it all together back to Oscorp, which is kind of the running. It's the major bad guy in the series.
Oscorp
is not good.
Yeah. And I, at first, and like I said, you and I kind of talked about this. At first, I didn't like that everything tied back into Oscorp, because I'm sure if they do Venom or Carnage or pretty much anything from this point for the next couple movies, it's going to somehow tie back to Oscorp. But I realized the necessity of it, and I'm okay with that now. Mm-hmm. And I think with Spider-Man has such a wide array of villains that I think you kind of have the opportunity and the ability to tie everything in together, or to keep it separate as you like. So this could work. I'm not as harping on that as much as I was originally. But with that said, I also didn't think that there was any need to have the Rhino in his suit. And I know you disagreed with that, correct?
I don't necessarily know if I did. I mean, I don't know if it was a bad thing to have him in his suit, but I think it was just kind of... My complaint about that whole scene was that it's in the trailer.
Yeah,
and so the entire movie, I'm waiting for that scene to happen, and it never does. So I know at the very end it's going to happen. Right. I really felt that it shouldn't have been in there. And I know that they were kind of trying to set up for the next movie, like, hey, look, we're forming the Sinister Six. You've already seen a couple of them. Here's this guy who was in the beginning of the movie who Spider-Man fought. Now he's in one of these suits doing stuff.
Maybe because it's such an odd place to end that film, that it also just kind of stuck out to me. It's like, I really didn't need that last scene with the Rhino. Now, I agree that some people probably wouldn't have known that he was going to become the Rhino, but I think you could have saved that for the next movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known. I mean, I realized that because I didn't know the Rhino is such a C-list villain, if even that I was like, I don't even know who his real name was. And I know they mentioned that guy's name in the beginning, and then when they mentioned it at the end, I was like, oh, I kind of remember him being his name, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, I'll just say I knew since Paul Giamatti was playing him, I knew, okay, well, that guy's the Rhino, because Paul Giamatti is an amazing actor. And I thought he was such a weird choice for this, not because he's not great, but because, like you said, the Rhino is not only just a C-list character, he's very one-dimensional. And so I thought that his acting talent should have been used for someone else. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but maybe he will elevate Rhino as a villain. Maybe, I doubt it. No, I can't even finish that statement.
I mean, I'm sure it's more along the lines of, hey, Paul, you're signed to do a bunch of movies with Sony, and we need you to do this role. Here's your money. Come do it. And he's like, all right, whatever, paychecks showed up.
Right.
I mean, and like we said, there's a whole movie coming up eventually with 6 of these huge villains. So if you've got 6 of them, and you can get him to be one of them now in this movie and in the next one, why the hell not?
Yeah, I get it. I
don't really question that. Actors do things for weird reasons. Like, I mean, you've heard the story about Bill Murray and Garfield, right?
Oh yeah.
About how he thought it was he thought it
was Joel Cohen.
Yeah, from the Coen brothers, but it was another guy named Joel Cohen. So when he was asked, hey, Joel Cohen wants you to do Garfield, you do it? He was like, yeah, why wouldn't I do it? It's Joel Cohen. And then when he got there and read it, he was like, oh, wait, uh-oh. And so he basically rewrote most of the script so it didn't suck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me that you'd have an actor like Paul Giamatti doing some kind of odd role.
Well, yeah, like
you never know. Maybe he's a huge Spider-Man fan.
What? Right. And that's what I was saying. Maybe he thinks he could really do some of that character, and maybe he will. I mean, he doesn't have much screen time in this one, considering. So,
no. And the time he does have, it's okay.
He wasn't bad.
It's not like
he did the role poorly.
I was like, that guy looks familiar, and I was like, is that Paul Giamatti? That can't be Paul Giamatti. Like he didn't look like him with the body form.
Yeah, so. He looked different. I thought the guy who played Harry Osborn did a great job. He has some odd facial expressions, but so does Andrew Garfield, which I will say, Garfield really cut back on his kind of whiny facial expressions for this movie. I think somebody told him, like, hey, they thought you were kind of overacting a little bit in the first one or something. Because he just didn't have that same odd set of expressions. I actually liked Andrew Garfield a lot more in this movie than I liked him in the first Amazing Spider-Man.
Well, in the first one, he was probably playing more up of Peter being being a really young, angsty kid who's just had nothing but crap life.
Yeah,
you
know? Who was always like 2 seconds away from tears. That's what he looked like. He looked like at any point you could prick him with something, he would just bawl.
And he probably was, based on how bad his life had been, so I don't blame him. And I think, it's just kind of showing that the character is maybe not quite in that emotional of a state anymore.
Yeah. And if that's true, good for him. It really looked like he was overacting it a little bit. And maybe, sometimes I think people forget you can't always blame the actors. Sometimes the director is telling them to do these things.
Or the writers.
Or the writers. And so it could be a mix of things. It was just an aspect I didn't appreciate in the first one, but it worked a lot better in the second one. The guy who plays Harry, once he actually becomes the Green Goblin, I thought the transformation actually looked a lot better than I thought it was going to, because I saw the initial photo and I was like, meh, but on screen looked great.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah. I've seen some like test makeups for the next Spider-Man movie already with him, and I think it looks really good. Right,
yeah. I think one of the big things you and I kind of talked about too was, should Gwen Stacy have died?
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Well, hey, we warned them.
That's true.
But here's my thing. She did a great job, and in my opinion, in the first movie, there wasn't a lot in the script that really gave them a big avenue for the audience to see, okay, well, these two are really connecting and becoming, great, and they have a really good on-screen chemistry. I think that's because they are dating in real life. But to me, that was even more pronounced because in the second one, because they had this built-in drama into their relationship with the script of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Mm-hmm. And I thought Emma Stone did an amazing job. The only stuff that I kind of disagree with is, I agree that for someone who's an intern at Oscorp, it's a comic book movie. So somehow she learned how Max Dillon's entire network of power grid thing works. So she was able to shut it off at the end, which I was like, how? What?
So, yeah, the suspension of disbelief stuff on that. Right, but I will say this. You'd be surprised the amount of stuff that people who work as interns or just assistants for students actually learn, because the people who are supposed to be doing the work just dump it on them. And they expect you to figure it out. This comes from personal experience. Like, figure out how to do the software, and then 2 weeks later, they're asking you how to use it when they're the ones who should be teaching you.
Yeah, and I will totally give you that. But it just seemed odd. Plus, I agree. After talking to another friend that saw the movie, there's this one of the best comedy parts of the film is this part where Gwen wants to go help Peter, and she puts her hand on top of the hood of a car, and he webs her hand to the hood of a car, and she yells after him, Peter, even though he's in a Spider-Man costume, and she immediately realizes her mistake and covers her mouth. That was great comedic timing. It worked. That's probably the funniest moment to me in the movie.
And the downside of that was it was in the trailer, so you would not have even had to see the movie to see that scene.
I agree with that. Thankfully, either I missed that trailer or I didn't pay attention to it.
Oh, man. Yeah, there were so many scenes in the movie that, to me, were like big scenes that were in the trailer. The trailer completely ruined that movie. I mean, I will say this. I didn't think... from the trailer, I didn't get the feeling that she was going to die. But once the movie started rolling, I was like, yeah, they're building up to her leaving. I was like, I don't think she's leaving the way she wants to leave, though.
Right, yeah. Well, you're going somewhere.
Yeah,
but...
you might be leaving, but you ain't leaving alive, honey.
Yeah. But I will say this, and I'm going to give credit to Michael for this because he mentioned this. So he webs her hand to the car and leaves her there, which my first thought is there's rioting going on in the city, and we've already proven there's not enough cops to do it. So he just left her defenseless, stuck to this cop car. Also, she then steals the cop car, and then even though everything's in chaos, is able to get to Peter pretty quickly, not just in New York traffic, but in New York, pretty much probably gridlock, because if you see some of the scenes of Spider-Man flying over the city, all the cars are stopped.
If you're going to nitpick about this, then you might as well start nitpicking about, him being able to create these things that shoot web that he can sling on.
Now,
it's a comic book movie. Suspension of disbelief. That's what I'm saying. Back
to the suspension of disbelief. This is one of those parts where it didn't even occur to me really until after someone else pointed it out, and I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the fact that Gwen knew how to restart the whole system
that
was a little bit more thing.
Like
but,
the other stuff. See, that's the problem I have with people in comic book movies in general. Like if that was to happen in a comic book, it wouldn't be questioned. Like, she gets there. Happens in a movie, suddenly it's like that's bullshit. Like,
well, I
why
think
is it? No, it's not. That's just it's just the way it's just got to let it's a fantasy world. Fantasy things happen. In this fantasy world, there is no New York City traffic during a riot. You can get to this place to help your boyfriend save the city.
Yeah. I think that's why someone like Nolan went and tried to take his series of comic book movies a little bit more realistic, because he was trying to avoid certain criticisms like that. And, I don't know. It's not a big issue. This is a very small thing. My biggest problem with Gwen Stacy is I actually don't think they should have killed her.
I mean...
I will say that because now I believe they're going to try to insert and whether they should or not is not the question. I believe that Sony will attempt to insert either Mary Jane, or we already have Felicia Hardy. There will be a new love interest in the next movie. I think it will it has the potential to muddle the movie down.
There has to be a love interest because it's this Hollywood movie, and all Hollywood movies have to have some kind of love triangle interest thing going on.
And Emma Stone was one of the best parts of this series so far.
I agree. But I think Gwen Stacy, I mean, in retrospect, I'm surprised I didn't realize that they were going to kill her, because after her father died, that's when she died. Yeah. Like, it wasn't too long after her father was killed that she ended up dying too.
It was like 20 issues or so, yeah. It
so,
wasn't long in comic book relative times.
And that's a defining moment in Spider-Man's history, is the death of the Stacys, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Both of them really affected him, and it changed him a great deal afterward. And that's probably why he didn't get in the comics. He didn't really get into a serious relationship for a while after that, because he was afraid to.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know. Yeah, I know. For a little while, he would go out on dates. Like, he would go out as Peter Parker on a date, but he would never let it go too far. Yeah. And you're right. That's because of he knew what they had been saying in this movie the whole time, which is why they couldn't get together at the beginning of this movie. Which is, if anyone ever got too close to him, they're in danger.
Mm-hmm. And that's and I think that's just. Her dying in this movie is basically just another defining role in this version of Spider-Man's life. How, what they'll do with it from there, I don't know.
Also, that just last whole scene felt so rushed, because you have your big fight with Electro.
Yeah.
Which was fine. Some of the action scenes in this were great. As an action movie, just I want some popcorn and watch crap blow up and Electro come in on his techno music and just blow shit up. It was great. There was that was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is the scene between him and Electro in Times Square, and then him and Electro in their last fight. Mm-hmm. We're obviously pretty sure Electro's not dead, because I like that at one point they even say you can't really destroy energy, but they overcharge him. Which is fine. It still looked good. It felt good. Again, suspension of disbelief. No problems. And then we get into this last scene where the Green Goblin shows up. Completely, as far as Peter knows, completely new villain. He realizes pretty quickly that it's Harry. Or actually, I think Harry first realizes it's Peter because he sees Gwen Stacy there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have this fight inside this clock tower thing. Which that was one of the themes for it, because it starts with going through Richard Parker's clock, and then it goes through the clock tower kind of elements at the end. But that last fight scene felt incredibly rushed, just like they were like, okay, we want to spend a lot of time on Gwen's death, and that part actually worked really well. I thought I was going to think it was a little bit too cheesy, and especially when the little web strand coming down and opening up like a hand, and I don't know, it wasn't as cheesy as I thought it was going to be. I actually thought they handled the death really well. It just felt so rushed. So
I kind of agree with that. I do think I don't necessarily think it was rushed. I don't think it was ordered properly.
Yeah.
I don't think he should have taken down the Green Goblin and then she died. I think somehow she should have died and then he took down the Goblin. Yeah. But at the same time, the Goblin wasn't the main villain in this movie. The main villain was Electro, and that was the majority of the fight. And I think the Goblin was just, once again, a setup. It was like, here you go. there's now this thing going on, and now what I think that really did was it saved them time in the next movie. So in the next movie, they won't have to explain why Harry can do this or he can go through this and why he sets up these 6 people to be these Sinister Six and stuff like that. Instead, it's like, we've laid the groundwork. The movie can just start with it. My
problem with that, and this, you may have a different opinion on this, of course, but when you do films like that they're all set up or that they're all these center points, and the second movie are usually bad about this. In 5 years, when you're looking back on it, is this going to look like a good movie, or is it just going to look like it belongs in the series of Spider-Man movies? Because a lot of setup movies usually just don't hold up as well.
I don't know. And that's something I can tell you in 5 years. Okay. I can't tell you that today. Yeah. I mean, once again, though, to me, it's still better than any of the Raimi or other ones. It just, Sam Raimi, I don't know. His movies were almost way over the top to me more than this one. Like, this one had a couple scenes where I was like, seriously, grabbing my heartstrings here. Okay, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to force an emotion out of me. The Sam Raimi ones were worse about that. They're very, like, moments in those.
Yeah, the one with the little kid was the one for this one. In every Spider-Man movie, there's a scene where New York comes out. And other than the Jesus moment in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, that I think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 was infinitely better than this version of Spider-Man 2.
I mean, I could say that they're on par. Yeah, but
this one was obviously better than Spider-Man 3. Okay, yeah. No question. I'm not.
The first one in this series is better than Spider-Man 3.
Maybe.
Seriously, dance scene down the street. If you're gonna tell me that the first one in this series was not better than Spider-Man 3 after like emo Venom Parker, dancing down the street and doing some kind of dance routine in a jazz bar, you're crazy. That movie was horrible. But
it did have good parts.
No, it didn't. You know what the best part of that movie was the ending, because it was over.
Sandman was the best part of that movie.
I disagree. I think that to me was a villain thrown in that made no sense.
Well, that was a villain that would have worked had Sam Raimi been allowed to do his original plan. Sony forced him to use Venom. Venom was not in the original script for Spider-Man 3.
And it's obvious.
Because originally it was Sandman and Vulture. And I don't know if the original plan was to tie in Sandman to Ben Parker's death, but that was the only bad part of the Sandman character, is when they tried to tie in his death to Ben Parker, or Ben Parker's death into his origin. All right, so I will agree. I will say that I think Amazing Spider-Man 1 could possibly be better than Spider-Man 3, but I think there's an argument there. And I actually am a big fan of the first Spider-Man movie, other than the horrible Power Ranger villain-esque looking armor on Willem Dafoe. However, this movie did something I actually really liked too. They had a couple of really cool kind of, cameos, or not cameos, but kind of guest appearances, I guess. As far as Alistair Smythe was Max Dillon's boss, and for anyone who's followed the comic book or the cartoon, Alistair Smythe becomes a villain later on. Mm-hmm. I'm just hoping he gets put in a wheelchair. That's what I thought was going to happen. I really thought when Max Dillon did his assault on Oscorp, he was going to find Smythe and he was going to shock him somehow or cause him to lose motor functions or whatever.
Get crippled.
Yeah, get crippled, bitch. Yeah. But the other one is Gustav Flyers, who was the gentleman, and that is the individual who is in the hat that was in the after credit scene of the first Amazing Spider-Man, and he was in a scene in this one.
Yeah, he was in like the very last scene.
Yeah, setting up Sinister Six. Plus, I believe it was you who told me that he was in a scene also that was taken out of the movie.
Yeah, so in this, there's this weird deal that Sony and Fox made because of like Sony taking Mark Webb from them.
He was supposed to do another 500 Days of Summer or something like that.
Yeah, he was supposed to do another movie with them. So the deal was at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sony would air a clip from the Days of Future Past X-Men movie that's coming out on like the 23rd of this month. And the X-Men movie would air a clip from Amazing Spider-Man 2. That does not mean they're doing a crossover. There is no crossover. It's just some weird
I'm sorry to break your hearts. Yeah.
And to make room to fit that scene into the trailers, they cut out a possible scene for actually building up to the next Spider-Man movie, which was going to be that gentleman character going into, you know, the secret area in Oscorp and speaking to this head in a jar that's Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
So,
and the actor who plays Norman Osborn, we don't get a lot of him in these first two movies, but he's actually a pretty decent actor. He was one of the bad guys from the Bourne movies or something like that. And he was
the
really
bad guy from the first one. He was like the guy who's the head of the agency. I can't remember his name.
I think he'll do a great job as Norman Osborn. I will miss Willem Dafoe, but you know. But anyway, I agree. Kyle and I think actually agree on this one. The scene at the end that they do put in there for X-Men, I'm excited to go see X-Men, but of all the scenes to choose, that felt so. There had to be a better scene to put at the end of that.
The problem is there's no context. It's just
none.
Here's these weirdos sitting in this bunker, and this dude shows up. It's like, they're coming with me, and they're like, why is he coming with you? The dude turns into Mystique. Mystique beats everybody up, and then they walk and get on a helicopter.
I think they thought. I think they really thought, like, hey, this will pump people up. It's like, yeah, stuff's happening, but we needed some amount of context.
Well, when I was in the theater and the people who were still there and they saw the X-Men thing come on, people started cheering. But I don't think there were people who knew that does not mean anything. But then afterwards, you could tell they were just as confused. They're like, what does that got to do with anything?
Yeah.
And, what's the point of putting the Amazing Spider-Man clip at the end of the X-Men? By that point, truthfully, the rate that, like, the viewership is declining on that movie each weekend, it might not even... It'll probably barely be in theaters. It'll probably be showing 2 or 3 times a day.
That was something you and I actually were discussing last night, was that it's kind of sucks because I know that the movie financially is doing well, but it's not doing what Sony projected it to do, and it's not going to pick back up, because what happens with some of these films is they release them at a time that there's nothing that's really going to overtake them in the next few weeks after their release. But the problem is Neighbors came out the week after and kind of overtook them for the number 1 spot, overtook Amazing Spider-Man 2. And now we have Godzilla coming out soon, and we have X-Men Days of Future Past coming out soon, which are probably both going to do very good numbers.
Godzilla's this weekend. I think X-Men's the next weekend, isn't it?
I believe you're correct. And the problem is that's going to squash any other numbers. Yeah,
there's no chance for them to get a bump.
You're right. There's no chance for them that.
It's out now.
Yeah. And I can't. There was a movie I actually just read, and I totally forgot the name of which title of a movie it was, but it was a movie that actually didn't do so well in its first opening weekend, but because there was just nothing coming out in the next couple of weeks, it actually ended up making more than they expected. But
the problem is this year in the summer there are so many comic book movies that, like, it was hard for them to choose when to put it out, because if they would have done it any earlier, then they're going up against like
Winter
Captain
Soldier,
America, and they were not going to do any better than Captain America. And if they wait any later, then they got to deal with Godzilla and X-Men. And then even if they wait till the very end of the summer, then they've got Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. I will say that this Amazing Spider-Man 2 apparently is doing very well in the international market, but the same thing is about to happen, because the international markets are going to get these 2 movies about a week after we do, and you know. Yeah. That was the other weird thing. Why did the international markets get Amazing Spider-Man 2 a week before us? Do you know?
No, I have no clue.
They did, and I could never find a reason online why.
It's probably just because of timing.
Right.
Like, maybe they didn't have Winter Soldier or something at that point, or maybe they were getting it later, or maybe they had that earlier too, and so they allowed them a chance to bump it up earlier.
Right.
So. But it still made a good bit of money. It didn't make what Sony had predicted, but it's not like it lost money either.
Yeah.
And they've already signed on for a 3rd one anyway, so it doesn't matter. They were going to do it regardless.
They're doing 2 more films. And I saw a thing where somebody was like, why doesn't Marvel step in? And my thing is this. I think Marvel is so much more content to let this continue, because here's the thing. When they get ready to take the control, if this ever happens, of Spider-Man's film rights back, they still have to pay Sony X amount of money. And if it keeps going down, if the amount of money that the Spider-Man movies make keep going down, that probably means that they'll have to give them less money when they take it back. So I don't think Marvel cares. I think they're willing to let Sony sit on this for several more years.
Well, what's happened each time, too, is that when it comes up for a renegotiation with them or Fox for X-Men, they were like, well, listen, you can keep it and you pay us this much money, but we want this character back that you had the rights to. That's how they got back Daredevil and all these other characters. And
Blade.
Now they're going to have, they're going to have those series on Netflix.
Was it Blade? It was Daredevil or was it Ghost Rider? They got one of them back.
They got back a bunch of them. Some of them are ones that movies had never been made about, but they had bought the rights to do. Like, I think Iron Fist was one of them. That's how there was going to be a movie about him, or the TV show about him.
Right. That was one.
But I think, like, I wouldn't doubt when this next Fantastic Four movie they're working on comes out, if it does bad, Marvel will probably end up getting Fantastic Four back, because this is going to be the basically third attempt Fox has made at one of these movies.
I would put money down, and I stand behind this, that they will get Fantastic Four back before we get X-Men or Spider-Man back.
Oh, money on it, because the X-Men and Spider-Man movies do very well. The Fantastic Four movies they've done okay. Like the first one, I guess, did well enough to do a second, but the second one didn't do well enough to do a third. Yeah. So if this next one doesn't do that well, then I just don't see Fox wanting to keep sinking money into it when they can just bank it all on the whole X-Men franchise.
Did you hear that they've already apparently fired their first set of writers from the Fantastic Four reboot?
No, I haven't been keeping up with it. It's too far out.
Well, this isn't surprising. This actually happens a lot, but a lot of people are already trying to put nails in that coffin because they did fire the first group of writers.
Yeah. Well, I think some of those characters, like, the companies have to produce movies every so often, or Marvel gets to a chance to buy it back. And I think Fantastic Four is one of those, because they did the movie, the terrible, basically, like, straight-to-video movie in, like, the 90s, so they could keep the Fantastic Four. Then they did the movies with Jessica Alba and those folks and Chris Evans. And then there's been a big gap, so I think this is like, we got to get something going so we can try to keep this franchise. Yeah.
I don't know the timing because it's different for each one, but I like, each company has to produce a movie with these characters or someone from that. Because, like, okay, X-Men, they don't have to produce an X-Men movie. They bought a group of heroes as the mutants. So they have to produce a movie with someone from that grouping to keep
Wolverine,
the rights to that.
Or Gambit or somebody.
Yeah. And each, like I said, each contract's different for how often these movies have to come out. But I know, the Fantastic Four. If you have never heard the famous Roger Corman is his name. It's the story for the Fantastic Four movie they did in the 90s. It didn't even come out in theaters. Mm-hmm. Went straight to VHS or whatever, and it was really hard to find a copy of. I actually finally found a copy of it.
So terrible. Why would you want to watch it?
Because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see if it was as bad as everybody says it was. And it was right. But actually, I will say, it was better than the 90s Captain America movie.
Which did go to the theater.
Yeah, that's not saying much, but, whatever. Anyway, the point is that, they made that movie just because they wanted to keep the rights to Fantastic Four, and that's a great example. But, yeah, every time they renegotiate these contracts, we do get a little bit closer and a little bit closer back to Marvel getting them, because either Marvel gets more money, or, like you said, they pull something from them. They get something out of it.
Yeah, like, hey, you can keep Spider-Man, but we want to get Luke Cage and Doctor Strange back, and then get the money still. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Because, truthfully, somebody like Sony and Fox, they don't want their entire roster to be nothing but superhero movies, because those are pretty expensive, and they're hit or miss.
Yep.
And so...
And it's very saturated right now, so to be a standout superhero movie, you really have to put some work in.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of what happens with it, and they'll be like, well, this movie, we don't think, we've been trying to write this one, but it's not happening, so here, take it back, or we don't think this is going to be a good seller.
I actually, and I'm gonna take a limb here, I'm still looking for a new Blade movie, so I'm hoping that somebody does something with that.
Amazingly enough, the TV show wasn't terrible, but like I understand why it was only a season.
Yeah, I saw the first few episodes. I liked it. I mean, it wasn't bad, like you said. The guy who played Blade wasn't even really the main attraction by like the third or fourth episode, but he did the role well. Mm-hmm. I've always said though, Blade's a side character. He's so hard to write in his own series.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think I personally would say if you can watch Amazing Spider-Man 2, I don't think it's worth paying the $9 or whatever it is in your area to go see it. But if you can catch it on a matinee,
I'm the opposite. I think it is worth it. Yeah. I mean, but I think I saw it for $8. I saw it like pre-matinee.
Okay.
But I'd still have gone to go see it at night. So there you go. One of us likes it, the other one doesn't.
That's our review.
Yep. So from reviewing a video game about an Amazing Spider-Man to a movie about an Amazing Spider-Man to a video game about cleaning up alien and marine body parts and viscera.
You mean reviewing a video game about an amazing disaster?
Yeah. So me and Steven played a game that we've mentioned before during our simulator episode called Viscera Cleanup Detail. And the premise of Viscera Cleanup Detail is all those video games that take place in space where the aliens, something happens and then the Marines come in and clean it up by blowing them up and shooting them and stuff. Well, who cleans up the space station afterwards? We do. We play those janitors who go in and mop up all the blood and all the gunk.
Janitorial engineers, sir. Yeah,
junior janitorial engineers. You have to move up in the ranks, sir. You don't get to start off as a full janitorial engineer.
All right.
But so, yeah, you pick up the body parts and go this whole route and clean it up and everything. So, what did you think of the game, Steven?
Okay, well, first off, cheap plug. If you go check out my YouTube channel, we actually have, the first video is out and the second one will be coming out later this week. Video of Kyle and I playing this game. And I will link the description in the bottom of this video and on the site, so don't worry. However, my simple review is this was probably some of the most fun. It is the most fun I've probably had in an early access game. And if you have friends you can play with, this will probably be a good time for all. Yeah. I actually suggest including alcohol, but as Kyle pointed out, that might make the game almost impossible to finish.
Yeah, and the game's cheap. It's like $8, but you can get like the 4-person pack for like $25, I think, or something. It's not that bad.
If you have 3 friends, which gambling here, but if you have 3 friends, you could pay $24, $25 and get the 4-person pack, and all of you could play at the same time. You could bump into each other, get each other's messes, knock everybody's buckets over. It'd be a nightmare.
Because part of the game is like, it's cleaning up, but there's things like, as you're running through puddles of blood and you run into clean areas, you leave footprints. If there's a bucket of dirty mop water and you spill it, it spills dirty water and you got to clean it up again. So, like,
no. If there's a bucket of clean mop water, it spills dirty water everywhere.
Not necessarily. If you've used it just once, it spills it. But if it's a completely clean bucket, it won't do anything. But at the same time, the water doesn't clean up a mess.
I just remember this one time I knocked over a clean bucket and it left a mess. I was so...
Yeah, if somebody dumped their mop in it just once, that's enough to make it dirty, so it will spill everywhere. But
if this is a real thing, this game is slightly frustrating, but it's a good kind of frustrating.
Frustration simulator.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's. I think what makes the game fun is, one, you're playing with a group of friends, and so like you get to see your friends get really frustrated at stuff, and then you just get to screw up, and then they get mad at you, or you get mad at them, or something like that. And the other thing that makes it funny are all the weird physics bugs that happen, because it uses the Unreal Engine, but it's still early access. And so, like, a great example is you have these bins that you put, like, bullet shells in and body parts. And if those things land in there funny, you'll just hear them just rattling. And just, like, the bin starts shaking and going crazy. And so then you got to try to carry it with stuff exploding out of it. And so it was just hilarious to watch somebody try to do this and to get super frustrated when everything goes bad.
Oh, man. Some of the best parts of the game are honestly the parts where you agree to split up, go take on different chores or whatever to try to help move the process along, and you just randomly hear strings of cussing from the other room.
Yeah, like, damn it, stupid buckets. Or when, like, you'll hear somebody getting a bucket of water, and then you just hear that squelch sound where they didn't get a bucket, they got a body part instead, and it makes a mess, and you're just like, damn it.
Sometimes the machines like to screw with you, and instead of giving you the bucket or receptacle that you asked for, they just send out a body part.
Yeah, I think it was like 5 times in a row I got one, and it was just getting to be frustrating. But I think I like the game, but I don't think I would not play this game by myself. I don't think it has any kind of fun factor. In fact, then it would be just infuriating to play by yourself because there's nothing to laugh at with your friends.
Right.
You know?
Kyle and I probably spent almost 2 hours cleaning one level. And
that was his first level. That's a small level.
The thing is, I could see Kyle and I playing that game 1, maybe 2 more times, just for fun. Especially if you guys like the video series, we may do another one. However, I think what the real fun behind this would be exposing new friends to this game.
Yeah.
I also played with a friend of mine, another friend of mine, and it was a lot of fun to watch him experience some of the things that Kyle and I found out, to go through some of the frustrations and just to the anguish in his voice when he realized certain things he had to do. Like, he didn't know anything about the bullet holes, and then when I explained to him that the laser could leave a greater mess if you're not careful, oh, that was priceless.
Oh man, I know that damn laser. I was about to say something else. That is, to me, the worst thing. Like, all the blood, all the bullets. The bullet shells can be a pain in the butt, too, when you see just, like, hundreds of bullet shells everywhere. You're just like, I got to pick all these up individually. Seriously? I have, like, some kind of vacuum cleaner. But, I mean, we're in the future, damn it. I don't have, like, a bullet shell vacuum cleaner to go around sucking these things up. Get a giblet vacuum cleaner to suck up all the body parts.
Actually, part of this... To me, some of the best jokes came from us discussing what these guys did when they weren't there, cleaning up all this stuff for, like, their pay scale and, going to the bar afterwards. So there's a lot of humor to be found in this, and for $8 you're going to get, if you just play it with a friend one time, you're going to get, or you don't have to do it with a friend. I'm sure you could, find someone online to play with. It is an alpha. We had a little bit of trouble. Not alpha, I'm sorry. It is early access, and we had a little bit of trouble connecting the first time, but after setting a couple things up, it's fine. It works pretty well. There are clear glitches.
Server, so it's like somebody has to host it on their machine.
Yeah, there are glitches and bugs, but honestly, it's just like in other games. Sometimes those are really funny. Sometimes they're kind of frustrating. Like there was at one point where I was lagging so far behind, I actually could not pick an item up, and I had to get Kyle to come and pick the item up. But
I've seen that happen when other people have played it. I mean, some stuff like that does happen, and some of that, it's not necessarily the game, it's just where it's being hosted, so probably my internet was not that great. The big bugs in the game are the physics ones, where it's like, the bin I put stuff in tipped over. Nothing spilled out, but then I go to pick it up, and there is no slowly righting the thing. You just flip it 90 degrees, and when you do, everything goes spraying across the room. So it's just like, I got to pick all this up and then mop up all the blood again.
Yeah. By the way, this game is very harsh. I want to say, I think Kyle and I did an amazing job cleaning this place up, and our review was less than kind.
Yeah, they probably would have fired us. Because, like, there's little things like
if you miss
BS. If you miss a bullet shell, it's just like you'll get a note. It's like so-and-so slipped on a bullet shell, broke his neck, and died. We blame the janitors for this.
If you accidentally leave the furnace open,
the heat.
They complain about the heat.
Yeah, they complain about the heat. If there's a bullet hole you don't fix, they complain about somebody gets paranoid about it.
Yeah, because they're afraid they're going to get sucked out into space or something.
Yeah, so and you'll get all these notes afterwards. So, like, at the end, it doesn't give you, like, hey, this is how you did, like, your typical scoreboard. Like, you get put into, like, the janitor's office, and you'll see all these notes plastered all over the place. You have to go pick them up and read them, and you'll read the little story about what happened. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the few times I've played it, the best I ever did was maybe only had 2 notes. Yeah. And that's because, like, I, went around specifically with we went around with the device specifically sniffing to make sure everything didn't pick. Because there's a device that will tell you, hey, there's stuff still sitting here, or hey, there's blood you missed.
Yeah. I will say that the game is neat in the fact that you can tell that whoever created it was inspired by stuff like Aliens and Dead Space and stuff. It has a really good feel to it. The idea, the premise is great. There's a lot of good stuff that they've put in here. There's a lot more they could do with it, but again, it's still in early access. There's a lot more they may do with it. And you were telling me that they have bonus maps, right?
Yeah, there's a bonus map for Christmas they made, and then there's also I think
Shadow Warrior or something like that.
Yeah, Shadow Warrior, the remake game with what's his name, Lo Wang, I think was the character's name.
Which I hear is good. I hear that the remake is actually decent.
It is really good. I played it.
You want to watch Wang? Watch Wang.
Yeah, that's you weak as a baby fought. That's the game. But so yeah, I mean, I think a couple bucks, pick it up. It's worth it.
Yeah. I would also say it's worth it, especially if you think you can convince someone to play the game with you, or if you know someone who has it. Hell, if you want, I will play the game with you for a little while because I've only played it a couple times, and it's entertaining.
Yeah, you don't. I
don't know if fun is the word I would use. I don't think fun is because I really felt like I was at work a couple times, but that's because I clean up after people at one of my jobs. So.
Well, there you go. So, my final verdict on Viscera is you should get it and play it. It's good.
Yeah, definitely try it.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Comics and Controllers. If you want to send us an email or ask us questions or send us stories, you can send them to comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter @ZombieJesus here. Where can they follow you at, Steven?
They can follow me on Twitter at Stephen Wilds. Also, check out my YouTube channel, which is my username is Serenity's Bane on YouTube, and I'll link it in the description below if you want to check out the videos of Kyle and I playing Viscera Cleanup Detail.
Cool beans. So, guys, until next time, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Steven.
Y'all have a good one.